Bosnia and Herzegovina se nalazi na raskršću kultura. It's a country that sits at the crossroads of culture. Geographically and historically, this region lies in the meeting point of three cultural zones, the Dinaric, Pannonian, and Mediterranean. These zones shaped more than just architecture or cuisine, they deeply influenced traditional dress known as Narodne Nošnje. Dobrodošli na Folklor Academy, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about standard Bosnian folk costumes, specifically what they were, when they were worn, and how they communicated identity and daily life. From village centers to urban centers, from stage performances and ceremonies, understanding nošnje is a foundational part of folklore. Ethnographically, Bosnia is made up of many regions, each with their own variations in costume and material culture. Among the commonly referenced regions are Posavina in the north, Istočna Bosna along the Drina River, Bosanska Krajina in the west, Srednja Bosna in the center, and Herzegovina in the south. While these regions shared broad similarities, local details mattered greatly, especially in traditional dress. Urban costumes, often referred to as gradske nošnje, developed largely under Ottoman and Oriental influence, where major cities acted as fashion centers for emerging attire. Rural costumes, or seoske nošnje, evolved more slowly and were closely tied to local production, climate, and labor needs. By the late 19th to early 20th centuries, these styles began to influence one another, leading to blended forms. Historically, nošnje communicated information instantly. It could indicate region, marital status, age, wealth, and the occasion for which it was worn. While a full overview of all the regional varieties would require extensive time, this video is going to focus on the most recognizable elements of Bosnian folk costumes. The urban costume for men was called bosansko odijelo, and that was very common in towns and cities. The main elements for men's clothing were košulje, gaće, čakšire, fez, boyaz, fedmen or jelek, depending on who you talk to, čarape, and običajima. The base layer was the košulja, a long, wide shirt made out of a fine cotton fabric known as vez. Decorative embroidery called kerice was often placed around the chest opening. Some variants had buttoned-up shirts. Beneath this were gaće, which were under trousers with a wide, dropped section known as the tur. Over the gaće were čakšire, these wool trousers that were typically dark in color. The upper body was completed with a fedmen or a jelek, a short sleeveless vest. Around the waist, men wore a boyaz, usually wool. However, there were different variants of silk and patterns that were worn by wealthier individuals. Headwear for a lot of men included the fez, which was typically red with a black tassel. Footwear would include white čarape and leather shoes. Shoes would be handmade in earlier years and then factory made nearing the 20th century. This type of dress was worn daily for urban environments, celebrations, social gatherings. This was the go-to fit for young unmarried men. Women's urban costume was generally more elaborate and consisted in two main forms. The older and more formal form had the košulja, gaće, anterija, as well as the šamija with a madame, ječerma or jelek, and čarape I papuče. This more traditional form centered around the anterija, a long open robe made from silk or velvet. Underneath was a long košulja, often embroidered along with gaće. Over the upper body, women sometimes wore fitted vests called ječerma, frequently decorated with gold embroidery. The waist was usually fastened with these decorative clasps made out of silver, and women wore white socks and decorative slippers/footwear called papuče. Headwear, or oglavje, was extremely important. Girls typically wore braids and small caps or fez-like headpieces. Married women wore a small cap covered by a šamija or a madama. The šamija was tied in a specific way, crossed behind the neck and secured on the crown, a detail that carried deep social, religious, and cultural significance. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, wide oriental trousers called dimije became much more common. This newer style was worn with a shorter košulja, a jelek, and a šamija or madame worn directly on the head. Dimije varied greatly in terms of color, while white čarape and papuče remained as common footwear. Due to dimije being more recent, they are the most common nošnje to find in today's performance groups. Anterija were a bit less common to see, but any girl that stands in any Bosnian folk group can tell you about their dimije. Girdle attire developed differently and often preserved older forms. Men's rural dress included long shirts tucked into the gache and wide wool čakšire, usually with wool vests known as the gunjic or the kopara. Footwear was typically opanci, and over time the fez replaced earlier head coverings. Women's rural attire featured very long košulje with embroidered gache visible underneath. A vest was worn over the shirt with a wool or woven boyas. Women wore šamija tied properly on the head, and footwear consisted of opanci. In mountainous regions such as Bjelašnica, these older styles remained well into the 20th century. Eventually, dimije spread from urban centers into rural areas, and košulje became shorter for practicality. Traditional nošnje followed a lot of rules and societal expectations. Your nošnje was your presentation to society, so it's something that everyone kept in mind. Today, Narodne Nošnje are usually seen in museums, costume shops, or on stage for folklore ensembles. Reconstruction and stylization are often necessary, but a lot of practitioners focus on the spirit of the nošnje rather than just how it looks on stage. Bosanske nošnje pričaju životne priče. They tell stories of religion, culture, life in itself. They reflect centuries of cultural change through region, climate, moving states, moving borders. It's a story of history. Understanding how and why these garments were worn allows folklore to be presented with a level of accuracy and respect. Whether on stage or in education or in memory, nošnje remains a powerful expression of cultural identity. I hope you learned something new today, and if you have any suggestions for certain types of nošnje based on a dance or a region, feel free to leave a comment. Thank you for taking the time to learn something new about folklore. Vidimo se sledeći put I prijatno.